All right, there we go. Now we have an agenda. You've seen it all, but we're going to go over it again. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself, the institution I'm with. Then I want to talk about sustainability, sustainable global enterprise in the context of business. And then I want to turn the attention to Japanese companies and what the implications would be in Japan. Along the way, I want to share both a framework, some theory, but also talk about specific examples. So with that, I'll give you a little bit of background about who I am. I grew up near Washington, D.C. As was said, I actually went to University of Michigan as an undergrad. Then I came to Japan. I lived here for 3 years. Then I went back and did graduate work at Michigan again. Did a PhD at Carolina. And the Japan experience for me has been something that has shaped me. And while I was here, the hobby I picked up was taiko. Yeah. So are there any taiko players? No. We have to get a Globus Cornell taiko group. That's my goal. And I'm happy to talk more later about my experiences here in Japan. The university I'm with, maybe you know it, Cornell University. It was established in 1865, and it's a unique university. It is both a private university and a public university. So in the United States, all states have a land-grant university. So for example, I went to University of Michigan. That's the state school. But the land-grant school is Michigan State University. At New York, Cornell is the land-grant university. So we have a huge school of agriculture. But we have expertise in a number of different areas. Business, obviously, that's where I am. Hospitality, arts and sciences, law, medicine. There's a medical campus in New York City. Veterinary medicine. And I know I'm forgetting probably a couple. Architecture, human ecology. What makes this unique with Cornell is in a lot of universities you have different silos. Yeah, different places, they don't interact very much. Well, Cornell's located in upstate New York. So we're surrounded by farmland, lots of farmland. 3 hours of farmland between us and New York City. We're all we have. We have to play with each other. And so there's a lot of interaction among the faculty in these different disciplines. It's a very multidisciplinary university. And that's important for the topic I'm going to talk about. Because when you look at the expertise for Cornell, the areas that Cornell has strength and where it wants to build strength, further strength in the future, it's life sciences, it's information technology, communication technology, computer technology, and sustainability. And sustainability in particular requires multidisciplinary knowledge to do effectively. I come at sustainability from a business perspective, and that's what I'll talk about. I have colleagues coming at sustainability in a lot of different ways. I think it makes the business solutions we create better. It also makes their solutions better because we bring a private sector perspective. So that's a little bit about Cornell. A little about the business school I'm in, the Johnson Graduate School of Management. It is really a general management institution, but it has its own areas of expertise. In particular, emerging markets, innovation and entrepreneurship, finance and investment, and of course, sustainability. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. We are a graduate school of business. So all of our programs are either master's or PhD level programs. And then I direct the Center for Sustainable Global Enterprise. Now, the center was established in 2004. We really have become, in a short period of time, I'm happy to say, a global leader in sustainable global enterprise research and teaching. And our focus has been in 3 areas. Really what we call market or enterprise creation, or think about entrepreneurial solutions to problems. technology commercialization, not technology development. That goes on in engineering. That goes on in some of the natural science programs. We're there to help take that technology from the lab into the marketplace, which presents non-technical problems. And then finance and investment. So much of the opportunity around sustainability requires new businesses to grow. And of course, in a market-based economy, you need to finance that somehow. And so we're developing a lot more understanding and tools for effective financial management of sustainable global enterprise. So very quickly, our mission, and I highlighted some of the words here, to develop business leaders. That's what we do as a management education institution. We want to develop business leaders, but we want them to look at the competitive opportunities that come from global sustainability strategies. And I think that's important because, as I'll talk about in a minute, when it comes to sustainability, it's fairly easy to think about things that are not necessarily related to the competitiveness of a firm. But coming from a management education perspective, we have, in a strategic perspective, we have to think about competitiveness of the firm. And that's what I'll return to as we go forward. So our approach, I think it's helpful to understand a little bit more about how we do work in our center. So one is, as I mentioned, we're multidisciplinary, multi-sector. We don't focus in one industry. We don't focus on one set of problems. We focus on a variety of problems in a variety of industries. The second important element of our approach is learning by doing. It's good to have theory. It's good to have frameworks. I think you do the best learning when you actually take on a challenge, you attempt to solve it, you learn as you go, especially in sustainability, where the answers are not clear. We'll talk about that more tonight. The third element that's important to understand is our approach really starts with the idea that you have to be creative and innovative and entrepreneurial in the business and sustainability space. The problems we face are very complex. The answers have to be created. They're not just there to apply. So it requires those three elements: innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. And then, very important for an academic institution like Cornell, where there is a lot of emphasis on theory and research, the work that we do is applied. The work that the center focuses on is applied work, meaning we work with companies, we work sometimes with NGOs, sometimes with government, but always on their problems. Not our ideas, but their problems, and our ideas as they relate to those problems. So to give you a sense, the way we approach our partnerships are really, they're partner-centered engagements oriented towards problem solving. So if we're going to, what company do you work for? NTT East. So if we had a partnership, we start with what's the problem for NTT East, not what's my latest idea as an academic. That I'm less interested in. It's not as relevant for you. And we've had good success. These are the companies we've worked with over the last several years. This is a variety of firms. Really small startups, 2, 3 people, all the way to big multinationals based outside the US. Some have domestic US interests. Some have interests Africa, Latin America. Most of these are private sector, but some are municipalities, some are government, some are NGOs. It gives you a sense of the variety. But there is a pattern to the interaction that we have with companies. And so really we have 3 types of projects that we have engaged in primarily. One is what we could call the market and business development type projects. And I give you 3 examples here: IBM, SC Johnson, Novozymes. These are really the market, the business creation, new opportunities to grow the business, new opportunities for finding revenue. The second is a little more general. It's really strategy formulation. And here are some examples of companies that we've worked with over time. Ocean Spray. You guys know Ocean Spray? Cranberries. You know, like cranberry juice? They make most of it. Cranberries. And Johnson & Johnson, consumer products company. Nike, the sports apparel maker. And the third set of projects that we work on are these clean tech commercialization projects. This is what I referred to a few minutes ago. It's not the development of the technology. Usually the company GE, Corning, DuPont, they know how to develop technology. They don't need my help. They don't need my colleagues' help with that. Maybe over at engineering, but not ours. But where we are helpful is to work and look at a technology that they have and think about, where do you apply that? How do you bring it to market? Where's the opportunity? Is it at home domestically? Is it international? With what kind of consumer? A wealthy consumer, a poor consumer? Those are the types of projects. So, any questions about who we are? Who I am standing in front of you today? Because if not, we get to the more fun part. Start talking about sustainable global enterprise. So, this is where it gets a little more interactive. What is sustainable global enterprise? Think about that for a moment. I'm going to start with this question. What is sustainability? And I want you, we're sitting this way on purpose because you're like teams. You have to talk to your neighbor. I want you to turn to your neighbor, to your table mates, and answer this question. What is sustainability to you? So take a couple minutes now, please, and talk about it with each other. So I tricked you a little bit. I started with sustainable enterprise, then I said sustainability, and you said it's broad. It's true. I want to start broad. So have you seen this definition before? Sustainable development. Meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. What do you think of that definition? That's from the Brundtland Commission report in 1987. It's the classic definition of sustainable development. Does it make sense? Make sense? Yeah? Do you know what to do with that in your business? What do you do with this at work? How do you take that definition to work? Very broad, right? So, what is sustainable development? Really, 3 pieces. As soon as I can figure out where I'm pointing this. Here we go. One more. Clean environment, strong economy, healthy society. And the definitions that you had all touched on those: the economy, society, and the environment. This, to me, is a good starting place for sustainable development and sustainability. We have to think, if we're talking about sustainable enterprise, we have to understand where that's related to. It's related to sustainable development. It has these 3 elements to it: social, environmental, economic. It's an important starting place. Because then we move. So first of all, what are we trying to address? Sustainable development, what's it related to? I think it comes down to 3 big problems. Poverty, ecosystem degradation, and climate change. These are humanity's 3 macro problems. They have a relationship to the economy, they have a relationship to society, and they have a relationship to the environment. Now, there are many problems embedded in all of these. Poverty has a lot of elements to it. Ecosystem degradation, meaning ecosystems that are getting worse, dirty rivers, unhealthy forests. These have many different components. And same with climate change. Not a simple problem. Very complex. But we have to understand, those are, when I talk about social and environmental issues tonight, I'm basically talking about these things. They're related to sustainable development. So now let's look at sustainability from a business perspective. You were talking about a definition for sustainable enterprise that was one in which the business has an opportunity to continue for a long period of time, right? But it has to relate back to social and environmental issues. We have to link that together. So if we think about today's business drivers, think about the things that are challenging here, maybe in Japan. Same things that we see globally: market saturation, technological development, population increases, pressure on the environment. All of these things sometimes seem separate from business, but they impact business decisions. They impact the strategic choices of individual companies and the strategic opportunities. So the business drivers that are shaping the market, from my opinion, they're related to the social, the environmental, and the economic. So you take that broad definition of sustainability, we can start to link it to business. But let's go a little further. What is sustainable enterprise? For me, it's how business and sustainability, sustainable development, how do they come together? And really over time, oh, I'm going the wrong way now. I think I'm figuring this out. I am. I've got it now. Aha. This is going to go much better for you. If you look at business and sustainability, it's typically very confusing. All of the terms up here, these are all related to sustainability in a business context, but they all mean very different things. Some represent activities, some represent ideas, some represent strategies, some are tactics. You could be talking, your job may relate to one item, your job may relate to a different item. If you have a conversation with each other, you're both talking about business and sustainability, but you're both thinking about something very, very different. So it can make it very hard to get alignment within an organization on the opportunity for business and sustainability. So what I want to talk to you about is how business and sustainability fit together, typically. And there's three areas. This first one, out of sustainable development, businesses have done a lot of activity in environmental management. And I list some of the activities from the previous slide here. Things like regulation, voluntary regulation, ISO 14000, environmental management, environmental reporting, life cycle analysis, design for environment. All of these are activities that typically happen somewhere in very large companies in particular. And there's a common theme to all of them. They're usually conducted by operations, folks in operations, environmental policy, or environmental health and safety. They fit in those areas. For environmental management, you're defining sustainability in a certain way. It really is defining sustainability as a regulatory challenge. How do we comply? What are the rules? How do we meet the rules? So that's one way of looking at sustainability in a business context. A second way that's become very popular is corporate social responsibility. Have you heard of CSR? Yeah, it's a popular term. But what is CSR? It means a lot of different things to different people. Most CSR activity is related to some of the activities here. Social audits, ISO 2600, philanthropy, worker safety, corporate reporting, corporate social responsibility reporting. These are slightly different than environmental management. they're usually done by a different set of people in the organization. Not the operations in environmental health and safety, but HR, public relations, marketing, maybe a corporate foundation if the company has one. And the definition of sustainability in corporate social responsibility is a little different. Here, sustainability is more about public opinion, right? So the first was about sustainability as regulation. This is sustainability as opinion. And the strategy is a bit different. You're concerned about, I'm the company, how do I look at sustainability? You're the public, how do you look at sustainability? I want to make sure we agree. So you like me, I like that you like me. It's important, right? So those are two different activity areas for companies where sustainability and business fit together. But there's a third area, and that's sustainable enterprise. Sustainable enterprise is a little bit different. Here, the focus is on entrepreneurship, innovation, new business development, new market creation. Trying to address those social and environmental issues, poverty, climate change, ecosystem degradation, with new solutions, with new approaches. And these activities are usually done by a different set of people in the organization. General managers, top leadership, research and development, finance and investment. And the definition of sustainability here is a little bit different. Here it's sustainability as a business opportunity. So all three of these are in the umbrella of business and sustainability, but depending upon what you're working on and what your approach is, and your organization's approach is, you can be working on very, very different activities that lead an organization to a different goal. So for me, my center, the colleagues I work with, we're really focused on looking at sustainability as a business opportunity. So then it becomes, how do you frame sustainability in ways that are attractive to managers? I spend most of my time teaching graduate students about business and working with top management, senior managers in a company. What do the students want? There's many students here. What are your dreams? What are your hopes? What do you hope to do? If you go for an MBA, what's your goal? Maybe make money? Maybe have career success? Maybe be a leader? Most of the students who come to our program, they have a vision, a dream. They're going to run a company. And many of the senior managers that we're working with, they are running a company. And they want to make sure that company continues to do well over time. So if I'm going to make sustainability relevant to them, I have to make sustainability about leadership, about growth, about opportunity. That's why it becomes framed as sustainable enterprise instead of environmental management or CSR. Does this make sense? It's a way these can come together, sustainability and business, in a way that I think makes sense for the private sector. Now, other areas can look at these problems very differently. Scientists, engineers will often look at sustainability from a technical standpoint. They'll get involved in environmental management. Governments, NGOs, will often look at it from more of a social perspective, more of a CSR perspective. But for the private sector to have and maintain interest in sustainability over time, this has to relate to what is central to a company, which is profit making and finding new opportunities that deliver value to the marketplace over time. So the business opportunity is really taking social and environmental issues on the one side and making those business opportunities on the other. It's taking the poverty, ecosystem degradation, and climate change and relating those to technology commercialization, new products, new services, new markets. It's a difference between the ability to deal with social and environmental issues and linking that to competitiveness in the marketplace. Remember, I mentioned that before about that's our mission. It's not just to develop managers, it's to develop managers to have an appreciation for and an ability to pursue competitive strategies, global sustainability strategies. But it means we have to understand what the issues are, the social and environmental issues, and how that links to competitiveness. Does this make sense? Okay, so far so good. So let me give you a couple of cases to make it a little bit more real of what it is that we're talking about. We've done a lot of work over the years with S.C. Johnson. S.C. Johnson and Samuel Curtis Johnson of the Samuel Curtis Johnson Graduate School of Management, same person. So our school has a very close relationship. Our center has a very close relationship to the company. And S.C. Johnson, together with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, people know Bill Gates, his wife Melinda, they started a big foundation, and ourselves got together around a social objective. The social objective was, how do you reduce malaria for at-risk populations? What is an at-risk population? Typically, this is a poor person in a malaria-prone region. How do you reduce malaria for these people? The business challenge was, how could you bundle products so that the value proposition to consumers leads to the adoption and use, and repeated use, of a malaria control product? So the social objective and the business objective, quite different. The social objective to reduce malaria, the business objective is to get people to use something, buy it, use it over again, so that while they use it, it reduces malaria. And you want them to buy it because you want it to be economically self-sufficient, because it's a business objective, not a philanthropy objective. Gates Foundation started this conversation. They have many, many years of working on malaria reduction. And they know they can go into any area and reduce malaria. They get aid, philanthropy, and government dollars. They pour it into a region, get rid of malaria, drive it to zero. But eventually that project stops, and now I come over here, and I pour aid and government money here. Your malaria goes down. You don't have the money anymore. Your malaria goes back up. This is the problem that they are struggling with from the NGO side. And then they look around the world. $6 billion market for malaria control products in the consumer market. No government aid, no philanthropy. And they wondered, that's a lot of money pouring into malaria control, but they don't harness any of that. So is there a way to build a business that would lead to the control of malaria? So the government aid and the philanthropy lead to a temporary improvement. The idea is, if you can build a consumer market where people are coming back over and over again to buy a product, and that product happens to reduce malaria, maybe you have a more permanent control mechanism because it's economically self-sufficient. And it can scale and replicate across space and time. So we've worked together for the last 2 years. But the challenge is, I'm back to you guys again. You have malaria? Is it a problem? Is malaria a problem to you? You're living in a... Why not? Well, we thought they did until we went into the communities. And we asked, is malaria a problem? No, it's not a problem. Everybody has it. You know, that's just part of life. So would you buy a product to control malaria? No. Why pay for something that's just part of life? So we begin by thinking, you just get the product, you sell it, because it'll cure malaria. But if your customer doesn't care, your customer has no value proposition. That doesn't work well. It's kind of like bed nets. You know, bed nets are very successful because there's a lot of government aid and philanthropy supporting that going into the community. But if you just try to sell bed nets, people don't like them. They're hot. You have to use them. They cost money. They don't necessarily see the need, the value for it. So we have to solve that problem. So the solution really, what was just launched this past year, is what's called WOW Membership Club. This is SC Johnson's business, WOW Membership Club. It consists of 7 people that are part of one club. You can have 7 people and 7 more people and 7 more people. Now you have 3 clubs. They have access to 4 products. The products all do different things. But they're not being sold to control malaria because the consumer, that's not what they're valuing. But what they do value are products and services that help them care for their homes and families. They like that. So you take the 4 products and you don't sell it because it controls malaria. You say these products will help your family and keep your house clean. And so now there's a slightly different value proposition. But it prevents malaria because of those 4 products include mosquito control products. We can't sell on mosquito control product. The company cannot sell on mosquito control, but they can sell on clean households and happy families. You just work the value proposition in, and now you have a financially viable business model which supports purchase, repurchase, and some malaria control. That's how you take the social and the environmental issue and you make it into a business objective. That's one example. Let me give you another example. Oh, sorry, I have some pictures. Forgot where my slides were. In order to accomplish this, it requires the company to do things very differently. You have to go into areas that are unfamiliar, to places that don't look like the places you know, dealing with people who are looking at the problems very differently than you look at, and you have to link that into a business concept that looks very different. So the products that go into the club membership, they're familiar products for SC Johnson in this case, but the business model that puts those products together and offers it to the consumer and builds value is something new and different and takes time to develop. It took 2 years to come up with that concept and to understand that this is what would work. So it's a lot of investment for something that has to start small and then grow. Let me talk about another example. This one I'm going to talk about Dow. Do you know Dow? Dow Chemical. So Dow set a set of goals, 2015 sustainability goals. And what they wanted is significant breakthroughs. They want to develop products that lead to significant breakthroughs in one of a number of areas: energy and climate change, water, food, housing, health. The project we worked on together focused on housing. So they wanted to think, what could they do? What significant breakthroughs could they make a contribution to that would make a significant impact on affordable housing? Okay? Affordable housing. Make housing available to more people around the world. So you ask, well, how do you define affordable housing? When we began, Dow defined affordable housing as being part of their coatings and infrastructure business. More specifically, building and construction, very specifically, pink insulation, pink fiberglass insulation. Affordable housing at Dow, when we started, equaled pink insulation. Okay, but global affordable housing looks like this. Yeah, there's no room for pink insulation here. There's no purpose. You do not need to insulate the house when it's 110 or 35 C out. And so the strategy for the company in the beginning was to work with municipalities and local governments and try to change the regulations so that pink insulation could be used in buildings. But that really had nothing to do with affordable housing. It had to do with extending the existing product. Unfortunately, affordable housing is more than just about housing. It's about more than just about housing. It's about a lot of different issues: social, technical, political, economic, cultural. It's a complicated problem, and pink insulation does not address these problems. So therefore, the value proposition for affordable housing is very limited with one product. When you look at affordable housing, there's different ways to look at it. Whoops. Oh, it seems to just want to go. There we go. Affordable housing has multiple issues: land tenure, urban bias, environmental issues. And each of those had sub-issues. So affordable housing is about a complex problem. We go back to Dow. This is, remember, how they defined it. It's within their coatings and infrastructure business, specifically within their building and construction business. But the coatings and infrastructure business consists of other businesses: materials, water process solutions, performance monomers. Why just one business and one product? Is that the source for affordable housing? Why not look across these business units? Or better yet, instead of just coatings and infrastructure, why not look across the whole company? Because affordable housing has lots of different elements. There's materials issues, there's water issues, there's so many issues, there's so many other areas in the company that can address affordable housing. So by looking at it in one business, in one product, it's not really developing a value proposition. Instead, we have to think about multiple product service opportunities that the company can utilize, all the technology, all the knowledge and experience that the company has, and apply it to a complex problem. And that was the nature of the work that we did together, was to identify that, about how to approach affordable housing. So I want to transition in this last part a little bit. So I give you an idea first of who I am as an individual and the institution I'm with. The second is to talk about sustainable global enterprise and provide a framework for us all to have a common base of understanding. And now in this last part, to move over to think about what are the applications for Japan. Because this is something myself and my colleague, I'm joined here tonight with Yasu Karakawa. You want to? Yeah. Welcome, Yasu. Yasu and I are working to think about how we can bring some of our knowledge and experience and collaborate more with partners here in Japan, with organizations like Globus and companies like yours. So we think the key strategic questions that companies here face are ones that are familiar to the partners we've been working with. Where are the new opportunities for growth? How can we position ourselves? How is the market changing? How are we going to finance new ventures? What steps should we take? These are big questions, big strategic questions. But they're the same kinds of questions that we asked with S.C. Johnson, with Dow, with all these other projects that I showed you earlier. So I want to do another exercise because you've been listening to me for a long time now. And I'm wondering, if you think about your companies, or maybe some other company here in Japan, I'm going to show you some pictures, and I want you to talk for a minute. What are the business opportunities that you see in the pictures? Okay? Talk to each other. What business opportunity do you see? Think about what your company does. Not just one business, not just one product. What's the problem you see here? How could your company bring something to help address this problem? Or maybe two of your companies get together and think about addressing the problem. I'm going to give you another picture. Keep talking. It's the opportunity. I'm going to show you one more. What's the opportunity you see? Right? Most companies here are spending a lot of time worrying about domestic saturation, worrying about global opportunities, but do your companies understand what the opportunity is? We've got to get into unfamiliar situations, understand them, then we can think about how to solve them. Difficult to do that from a distance. I'm sure you saw all kinds of things, solutions around cooking, around heating, infrastructure, materials, water, electric power. Yeah, so many opportunities. Billions of people who don't have the products and services we think about all the time, but for whom the products and services currently made do not necessarily apply. We can't just take what we know and shove it into a new place. We have to understand the nature of the problem. We have to take the knowledge we have and recombine it. Creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And we have to learn by doing. We have to go to these places, understand what the challenges are. You don't necessarily have to go to Africa or Latin America for that. You can go to a lot of different places, but you have to get on the ground and begin to understand the problem and how it linked what the social and environmental challenge is, because all of these are social and environmental challenges, and then link those to the business opportunity. It's what we've been talking about. So I think the key challenge, though, is there's no answer, right? If it was an easy answer, there would be no strategic opportunity for the company. The opportunity is in the mystery. The opportunity is in the unknown. There's no answer, but if the company can work to develop that answer, there's a good market opportunity. How long does it take to develop an answer, though? How long to develop a new technology? It takes a while. Research has shown consistently if a company is going to develop a breakthrough, not an incremental change, not an incremental extension, but a breakthrough, at least 7 to 10 years. That's a long time horizon. But if you don't do it, the opportunities are worse, right? The future's worse if you don't innovate. And you don't have to do it all at once. You have 7 to 10 years. But to learn, you must start down a path. Most companies don't make any kind of investment at all. They don't start to experiment. They don't try. It seems too big, too hard, too much. But it is possible. You have to start and work your way towards a solution. And the key obstacles that prevent most organizations are around fear of failure, a dependency on the past experience, the way we've always done things, business as usual, and that silo mentality. I talked about Cornell. It's unique because really we break across The barriers, the silo barriers. We learn from each other. Companies have this problem consistently as well. And as managers, we have to actively manage to break those barriers. So I mentioned it earlier, our approach is about experiential learning. It's learning by doing. And really what we're advocating is companies need to start managing an innovation cycle where you seek variety, do things differently, develop new skills over time. It takes time, but you have to start. Develop new skills. Incubate new ideas and things that will lead to change. And then eventually develop a new portfolio of activity, new products, new services, new commercialized technologies to access new markets. So I'm going to end by talking real quickly here about 7 principles that I think are important for organizations to consider. And we can talk about this more in Q&A and in the discussion after. So this first principle is the idea that sustainability becomes a core business driver. It's not a regulatory problem. It's not a problem of greening. It's not a problem of messaging. It's a strategic problem. It's about where the company's opportunities are going to be. It's about solving the big problems of today. Because if you solve those problems, you have a value proposition in the marketplace. If you're not solving those problems, consumers may not care. So it's not just something to talk about. It has to be, it is the driver, it is the strategic driver of the firm. The second principle, which we touched on, it takes a commitment. It's not easily solved. Companies come to us all the time. We need to have a sustainability strategy. What's the technology we can commercialize? What's the business we can launch? Who are our customers? That's not a quick answer. I can help them develop an answer, but I can't do it fast. You have to have time. These things take time. You're in new territory. You're learning new, unfamiliar things. And it's not just reacting to a trend. Years ago, somebody asked me if I thought sustainability was a trend. I said I did not think so. The science, the social and the environmental issues are very clear. The problems are real, and they are not going anywhere. They told me, e-commerce, this was 1999, e-commerce, that is not a trend. They said that was very long-lived. And then the internet bubble popped. E-commerce is still a long-term opportunity, but very different from what they thought. Sustainability is this long, slow increase, but it takes a commitment to realize it. The third principle is to develop new solutions, new systematic solutions. So if you're going to innovate, be entrepreneurial, be creative, you have to have the processes to make sure that you achieve those goals. You have to have the tools and the metrics to make sure you're making progress. Most companies don't have the process. They don't think enough about it. And fewer companies have the tools and the metrics to make sure that they're making progress. If they're just trying to change little bits to existing products and services, that's not really innovation. It's a type of innovation, but it's not the kind of innovation that's going to solve complex social and environmental challenges. The next principle is that consumers end up becoming partners. Not just consumers, government, NGOs, people with knowledge. Consumers have knowledge. All of our stakeholders have knowledge. They become partners, partners for understanding the problem, partners for creating solutions to the problems, and innovating on the problems, instead of just consumers as a target for sales, because that's very short term and very transaction oriented, instead of one that's more based in discovery and creation. The fifth principle is to try, adjust, learn, adjust, and retry. Waiting for perfect information, waiting to understand everything there is about the new situation, you wait too long. Companies don't start doing anything new. Those that are looking for the answer before they begin never begin. So it has to be that process for discovery. The sixth principle is failure has to be seen as an opportunity for learning. Companies that see failure as a flaw, both personally for a career and institutionally, they don't innovate. They become very conservative. They can't address the kinds of problems we were just looking at because they can't think beyond what they already know. And the last principle is looking for the opportunity in the things you don't know. Don't go to what you do know. Understand what you don't, try to learn what you don't know, then think about your knowledge and experience and applying it to this new situation, the new challenges. Instead of just depending on the past success and building on that in a very incremental way. These are the 7 principles by which we tend to get solutions when we work with partners. So the program that Yasu and myself and our colleagues are working on is really becoming a partner to provide this customized experiential learning. We're looking to partner up with Japanese firms and take that Cornell network and create new opportunities, new solutions. So in summary, it's really an emphasis on learning by doing, on getting into unfamiliar territory so that you can enhance the entrepreneurial mindset, proactive creativity, and collaboration and innovation. And so, again, what opportunities can we imagine? We can talk about that more in the dialogue and in Q&A. Thank you.
First of all, Mark, thank you for a wonderful 1-hour presentation. I have welcomed many guests, many professors from all over the world. I feel, this is my personal opinion, and I'd like you to leave your impressions to you. But one of the most intriguing 1-hour speech done in Globus style. That means interactive, not just one way. So I'd like to give a welcome hand again, a thank you for Mr. Mark.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me begin by speaking a little bit about my connection to Cornell. I spent a couple of years in the United States. I lived in New York, Montreal is Canada, and Boston. And Ithaca, where Cornell is located, is right in the middle of the 3 cities, New York, Boston, and Montreal. And if you lived in the New England, the best place you take your guest is Niagara Falls. The second best place you take is Finger Lakes. And that's where Cornell University is located. So it's a magnificent place, a beautiful environment, and I don't understand why faculty get together to break silos. And another connection on my part is I used to, my former job, I was senior managing director of a wedding company. Yeah. And my colleague, Keiko, she used to work in a hotel business. And all our mentors who taught me how to do a wedding business, they were all graduates of Cornell. And Cornell is #1 in the world in hotel management. So if you go to Teikoku Hotel or if you go to Palace Hotel, there's lots of people who are graduates of Cornell University. So let me begin by that. Another thing, some of the similarity I found between Cornell SGE and Globus is that we had a couple of video conferences to prepare for this session tonight. And I found that Cornell is very, very practical. Probably you found in Mark's speech about S.C. Johnson and Dow. These are real issues, not just academic theory. And Globus, for those who are new to Globus, we provide executive training to companies like Toyota, Tokyo Mitsubishi, UFJ Bank, Kao, number one companies in particular industries in Japan. So a lot of the requests that I get, if I cannot solve Indian entry, let's say for a company, they will not call me to teach again. So probably we're in the same seat in that retrospect. Today I went to visit Aeon, which is the number one retailer. It's Aeon or either 7-Eleven. That is the number one retailer in Japan. Aeon is a company that was built 250 years ago. And its origin is in Yokkaichi. And because you lived in Japan, and I heard that you are in Nanzan, in Nagoya, I'd like to start by this topic.
Okay.
Aeon started its business by a peddler. Peddler means a peddler selling textile to the farmers. And the initial Okada-san kind of traveled all over Yokkaichi and Nagoya, Okazaki to sell the kimono to the people. And in Yokkaichi, there's a word about omishoni, which is peddlers in that region.
Okay.
And it says in Japanese, sampo yoshi, urite yoshi, kaite yoshi, seken yoshi. And I'm speaking in English. Urite yoshi means it's good for the customer. Kaite yoshi means it's good for the suppliers. And seken yoshi means it's good for society. So my take on Japanese companies is they have a very, how to say, strong consciousness towards sustainability or maybe environmental friendliness. What is your take on the Japanese companies in general, in terms of sustainability? I'd like to start from that question.
No, that's a good question. I agree. I think there's a strong consciousness, but I also think like a lot of companies around the world, most of the thinking about environmental consciousness stops there. There's a relationship to the company, the economy, to the environment. But then that link that we've been talking about tonight to new business opportunities, that I don't see is clear. And I don't think that that's special for Japanese companies. I think that's the challenge for the private sector around the world. But I do think, at least my own experience in Japan over the last 20 plus years now, is the Japanese aesthetic has a relationship to the environment that's very strong. And so it's not a matter of trying to do something that's very difficult for people. It's just linking what people feel already in the institutional environment to enable the institution to thrive, as well as the people within it, for the benefit of the customers and the environment.
As you have shown in your presentation, I think the discussion will be easier if I give out a case. So let me give out a case of Toyota Motors. They have invented the Prius, which I see a lot in Denver or Aspen. There's so many Prius running in Colorado. Another thing is Toyota. When Moody's asked Toyota to abolish lifetime employment, they said they will fight with lifetime employment even if they are downgraded. Can you explain to us how do you see Toyota, for example?
I think Toyota is an interesting company. My view is, of course, I'm coming at it from an American perspective. So we have the big three automakers, GM, Ford, and Chrysler. And I watched with extreme frustration through the 80s, through the 90s, as American car companies have the ability to understand what the social and the environmental issues in the world today are, how those relate to climate change, how those relate to mobility. We have the the capability to decide that we're going to try to develop new technologies that would address things like carbon, but it never became a priority for us. We didn't make it a priority in those companies. At the end of the day, the decision was always to chase the money, but not chase what might be the better business model over the longer period of time. Meanwhile, Honda first, and then Toyota, decide that they look at the long-term trends in the world. And what are those trends? Rising population, more mobility demands, more fossil fuel use, more pressure on the environment. You need to come up with different mobility solutions. You get the Honda Insight, you get the Toyota Prius. And I think that their conclusion on what the strategic trends were, what I called earlier the business drivers, led them to a very different place than you saw, for example, in the American companies. But I also think that challenge is still there. It's not finished. The Prius is not the answer. The Prius is one opportunity. I think it was amazing because it showed the rest of the auto industry that if you give a customer something that they want, they'll value it, right? And so they didn't try to sell a green product with Prius. They just sold a product that had great functionality, great design, had a great brand image, all the thing that a car owner wants. And it addressed the long-term challenge so that as consumer trends began to be more concerned about climate change and the environment, they were able to have a product that would meet those needs. And the US companies and European companies fell way behind. But I think the challenge continues in that industry as others start to catch up. We're still looking for those mobility solutions. The trends are still there. The mobility solutions, the climate change pressures, the population pressures. Now you add to that the overcrowding of roads, so you end up spending most of your time just sitting in a car in many parts of the world, wasting a tremendous amount of time and energy. And so from my perspective, I think the Toyota and the Japanese automakers really have been exemplary in terms of the trends that I spoke about tonight, and everybody still has the opportunity to push that even further.
Chevrolet Bolt is quite popular now, I heard. And you talked about partnership today, but Toyota teamed up with Tesla, which is one of the most, electric vehicle venture. So it's not a BOP, but business. But in terms of sustainability, maybe team up between Tesla and Toyota can mean a lot for the industry as well as global warming, energy consumption. How do you see the partnership between Tesla and Toyota?
Yeah, well, you started with Chevy Volt. I'm not sure what to make of Chevy Volt, right? It's a step in the right direction, but as the American companies have struggled so much to find that right product connection with customers, I still think the Toyota Prius is ahead in terms of the connection it's made to customers. I thought the collaboration with Tesla was brilliant. It makes a lot of sense. Here's a company that's dedicated a lot of time and money and R&D to doing the things that we talked about. They made a long-term commitment to solving a problem with a new technology. And Toyota could start, but Tesla was already there. But Toyota's got plenty of production know-how, global reach and capability. So to take this high-end technology that Tesla developed and a mass production company like Toyota and let them learn from each other, I think the curve for innovation becomes steeper for them together. And that it's a good model because it displays for me that Toyota came to a realization it doesn't have to be the one to discover the technology. It doesn't have to be the one to always be the leader. it can find the right partners and move everybody ahead by collaboration.
Now I'd like to change topics. You talked about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship can be fostered through sustainability involvement. And I see some familiar faces from our students. Globus is known as a school for entrepreneurship, for innovation and change. And I was quite shocked, to be honest, when you showed the picture. I think it's India, maybe? And we didn't have many hands from students. Do you have any advice to our students and our audience today in order to be more entrepreneurial or to understand a little bit about base of the pyramid business? I'd hear some of your advice.
I think that, so your question touches on a big question that's, are entrepreneurs, do they just exist, or can you teach people to be entrepreneurs? Right? This is a controversy around management education. Our schools want to believe we can teach you. I don't know. But in thinking about this issue for a while, I think there is a value of institutions like ours for entrepreneurship, because we provide a space for people to think and connect. And so where individuals from different experiences and different knowledge can come together, the entrepreneurial opportunities increase. And it's difficult to have that happen on a day-to-day basis. I know that the students at Cornell who seek to be entrepreneurs, we have them at the business school, but they don't just stay there. They go across the street to the hotel school, or to agriculture and life sciences, or to engineering, and they form those connections and think about what the opportunities can be. Our students bring something to the entrepreneurial team, because it's rarely just the one entrepreneur who succeeds. It's usually that entrepreneur, the visionary, but they need the team with them to accomplish something. You need the person with the technical knowledge, the person with the market knowledge, the person with the product knowledge, the person who can sell it all. And so where these different disciplines can begin to come together and interact, and as we put up there before, it was try, learn, adjust, or try, adjust, learn, retry. To be able to do that collaboratively, I think, is a big opportunity. Before you go on to your next question, I realize as you were asking that, the last question you asked about Toyota and Tesla, you made a point about it's not BOP. And I think it relates back to the entrepreneurship. I actually don't use that terminology, I don't think, in the hour I spoke, BOP. Right? I think we think about it more, our team, in terms of market creation opportunities. Because the market creation can be in Europe, it can be in the US. There are so many social and environmental issues that need to be solved. All the problems that need to be solved aren't in the developing world. There are many, but they're really everywhere. And what I see our entrepreneurs doing is taking technologies, business models, ideas for new products, and applying them everywhere. Sometimes they're applying them to Africa, sometimes they're applying them right at home. A technology development like you see with Tesla and Toyota is just as valuable to solving climate change as trying to find alternative fuel sources for people in developing nations that are coming online into the grid.
My advice to students who did not raise their hands looking at the picture of India, go to India. Take a summer vacation, go to India, go to Africa. If that's difficult, go to Tohoku now. Look at what happened in Tohoku. As Mark said, sorry, it was not in the 1 hour presentation, we had a pre-dialogue. It's chaotic if you go to Tohoku right now. The infrastructure is not recovered fully. What can you do as a man or a woman in Tohoku now? If you keep asking those kind of questions, I think it will stimulate you and push you more towards entrepreneurship. If I may speak a little bit about Globis, we have a campus in Tokyo, we have a campus in Osaka, we have a campus in Nagoya. If you think in terms of, how to say, marketing, the next market in Japan is Fukuoka or Sapporo in terms of population or business accumulation. But we decided as a fourth campus to go into Sendai. And the reason why we decided to go into Sendai is because we thought there's a role that a business school can do to help recover Tohoku. So some of the discussion that we had in our board was going to Sendai the right decision? Because in terms of market size, or if we were thinking of IRR or NPV, sorry, these are finance terminology, there were other decisions. But Hori-san, being a founder and entrepreneur, he pushed us going into Sendai because we found that there was no business school in Sendai. And if we were to create a business school, if people like you can come and start businesses in Tohoku, it will largely help the recovery of Tohoku. So those of you who are living in a very good standard, Tokyo, there are places that you can find similar chaotic conditions in Japan. And probably you can take a weekend. You know, it's only 2 hours by Shinkansen, so maybe that will help.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, please.
Because I think it's interesting. Two things come to mind. One is the mayor of New York City had a competition at the end of last year for proposals for a brand new campus. He wanted to create a brand new technology campus in New York on one of the islands in the river there, Roosevelt Island. And it was very competitive, but Cornell was selected. And Cornell's excited about it for the same reason that I think you were just talking about Sendai. It allows us to get closer to different populations and different challenges and pull together different networks of people. But sometimes we can't always go to the places we want to go to. And that's why I think we're all very fortunate to live when we do. With the information communication technologies we have to be able to bridge the geographies that in the past would have been impossible. So sometimes we actually like to send our students into the field to work on specific projects. More recently in our program, we found partners in India and academic partners in India, and we link our students with students in India at this institution, and they work together to solve a social problem or an environmental problem. And so the local Indian folks can go down on the ground and collect information and can help communicate that back to the team in New York, and they can all begin to think about solutions. So it gets people from different areas working together, even when you can't get there, to be using the technologies we have the capability for to extend the reach of our institutions beyond where our campuses happen to be, I think is really important.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question about your principle, and probably that will touch about what's the value of, how to say, creating a partnership with maybe India, maybe Malaysia, or a very different environment from US or Japan. I'd like to particularly ask you about Principle 5, Principle 6, Principle 7. And Kenya, can you put up Principle 5, 6, and 7? Thank you.
Okay. So let me... Okay, what was 6 again? I don't have these memorized yet. Oh, you have them. Ah, see, he's cheating. He's got them in front of me. I'm supposed to remember what I presented 10 minutes ago? Okay, what about them?
Can you explain to us again?
Uh-huh.
You mentioned that your relationship with, let's say, academic partner in India,
Yeah.
that will help the entire New York campus. And probably those kind of elements are touched in principle 5, 6, and 7. If I may start
Okay.
ahead. We are doing some volunteer activity in Tohoku, not as Globis as a company, but as volunteers. And how I see my employees change after they've been to Tohoku, that I feel is learning through doing, as you said. And because their hearts are moved more when they, let's say, are faced with an extreme condition or a tragedy, or if they can be a big help to the community, I see them grow much faster than if they were in a classroom. So those of you who are in the MBA program, you might have heard of some of our students who are taking part as volunteers teaching English in Tohoku. I have watched them maybe a year. They have changed tremendously in this 1 year, helping, recover or give opportunities for elementary school students in Tohoku. And I felt, listening to your presentation, some of your principle 5, principle 6, principle 7 may touch on that point. So I'd like to hear how you see it.
Okay, I'm with you now. I get it. I think the idea of trying to get out of the element you're in and into another element, whether you can do that directly or whether you use technologies to be able to work with partners and begin to assimilate that, it becomes key to these 3 principles. One is, starting with the last one first, number 7, looking for opportunity in the unfamiliar. If you don't get into the unfamiliar, it's impossible to understand what the opportunity can be. If I had simply started with the question of what opportunity do you think exists in Africa, because those pictures were actually Africa. If I said, what are the opportunities you think are in Africa, that's pretty broad. But when I can show you a picture, or I can get you talking to people from the community, or I can put you in the community, the unfamiliar quickly becomes part of your experience, and it's easier to act from there. Then maybe we go to principle 5, because you have to think about what you want to try doing. And you can't wait for that perfect information. You can't take the time to learn everything you would need to learn. You don't have a lifetime to grow up in a region, understand all the particulars. But you have to do your best to work with people to make sure you're getting good information to act on, and then try something. Don't try the biggest thing, the most expensive thing, but take a step towards experimentation and see what happens, and then learn from that and adjust from that. Then try something else. Don't let it be one time and it's over. And that brings us to the 3rd one, or principle 6, which is failure as an opportunity to learn. If you go somewhere, whether you physically go there or you just connect, and you try something and it doesn't work and you leave, you have just lived out the nightmare that so many of these communities experience all the time. Outsiders coming in, doing something, makes you feel good, didn't work, you leave, they're still stuck with the problem. And then it breeds cynicism and eventually hopelessness, because they feel like no one really cares, no one really understands. But if failure is just seen as part of the learning process, okay, this didn't work, we're going to regroup, we're going to try again. Then there's a commitment to the partnership. And this, I think, is very Nihonteki, right? Very Japanese. If you just show up, you want to talk, do something quick, there's not so much interest. But you want to show a commitment to the place and the people, that I think Japanese understand. We're talking about principles that are very common here. People abroad value these just as much. So when you're willing to look at failure as an opportunity to learn, it means you are willing to commit to the problem. When it doesn't work, you learn from that and you try again. These problems, as you mentioned, there's a chaos because there's no answer. Nobody's figured out a good answer. To discover one's going to take time. The chances of discovering it the first time are very, very small. If you look at entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship and innovation, venture capitalists, they invest in 1,000 businesses hoping one succeeds. You imagine, like 99% of the time you expect to fail. We don't do that. Individually, we don't do that in our businesses. But these principles are really saying, not only do we need to do that, we need to do that together with partners, because partners will understand what's going on the ground oftentimes better than we can, but we can bring knowledge and skills and resources that the partners might not have. And so I really appreciate the question. It took me a minute to get my jet lag brain around it. Because they are related. When you get into the unfamiliar, you try something and you commit to keep trying even when it doesn't work the first time. It's important.
Let me just finish by a comment by my partner in Toyota Institute. He has been going to Tohoku for the volunteer activity every week. And he said after his 5th visit, he overcame that kind of ability, that kind of a notion that he's doing good for himself. From the 6th time, there was no him. He was thinking of, what can I do for the Tohoku people? Very pure. And he said, if I had not visited Tohoku 8 times, probably I would not have been able to reach this state. Usually people, as Mark said, if you visit once, you end it there. I did something good, I finished my role. But can you continue? 2nd time, 3rd time, 4th time? And he said he saw a change in the 5th time. So that I think is entrepreneurship. That I think is sustainability. With that, I have many things that I like to talk to Mark, but because he's a special guest, I'd like to open up to you.
Thank you for having this opportunity to have a question, so Dr. Mark. So I'm very interested in this sustainability. So, but sustainability is a practical very difficult because I experienced once I went to India to the startup for the factory for the electrical equipment, and so it's very good. So about 3 or 4 years ago, so we started up, but the speed of changing the situation is very fast, and so just now is a little bit obsolete. When then. So you said that the research and development is taking 7 or 10 years, but the market is very, very fast. In the 3 or the 4 years is almost out of date. So I am working for the heavy industry and very concerned about how we can overcome to this the very first speed, and how we can combine this. Sustainability, how we can so adjust to this speed and combine to this social concern. So how we can find out.
I wish I had an answer for that. I'd be a lot richer. We're facing that with a lot of the companies we work with. A lot of them are industrial, business-to-business companies. One of the projects, again, I just finished with a group of students. My semester ended last week. And one of the projects was with a business-to-business company. They sell a product that goes into ingredients that go into food, processed food, which goes into a product which is sold by a retailer, which ends up at a consumer. And they're thinking way down the line. They want to think long-term what the trends are: obesity, heart disease, all these physical problems. and they want to relate that back to the R&D that they're doing. They want to try to align with consumer trends, which change, and they're trying to convince their nearest partner in the supply chain, which is 4 levels away from the consumer, that this matters. And we don't know what the answer is, but we understand the process. And I think the recommendation we've made is the company has to think much more deliberately about the push and the pull strategies, the dynamics. So they're in the food business, food and beverage business. So they'd like to be able to say, we make a product that will reduce the carcinogens in processed food. But their most immediate customer doesn't care. They want the cheapest product available. But then there's also this consumer trend out in the marketplace which says they want health and lifestyle choices, healthier lifestyle choices. And so what we've been recommending to the customer, or to our partner, is not to wait for the market trend to catch up to where they are, but to work to shape it. So that you don't just wait to see what happens with the market, but you become this active participant that helps shape the direction of the market. That you get your immediate customer who only cares about price to feel some of the pain of the consumer trends, so that they're pulling your product in, as well as you're pushing it in because you know that this aligns with the trend. But I think all of these things, not to make it sound like that's easy, but I think these trends require, I think I said it, which principle was it? It was about develop new systematic solutions. This was principle 3, right? It's not just thinking about products and services, especially existing products and services, but it's thinking about the holistic nature of the problem and how we change our reactions to it. The whole system has to change, not just one piece. So companies as managers, thinking about what would it take to deliberately begin to manage the system differently, so that we're not caught in this pattern that you just described, but we begin to approach these problems more holistically with a broader set of partners than we would normally.
Next question. Yes, please.
First of all, thank you for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
It was great. I wanted to ask, because of your experience in Japan, what you thought, just broadly, what some of the common strengths and weaknesses are of Japanese companies, if you could talk about that.
The strengths and weaknesses, you said?
Right.
Okay. So maybe the weaknesses are easy, right? I mean, so I'm here with a group of students. That's what initially brought me here at this time. I've got at least a couple hours ago they were at the sumo tournament. 3 hours ago they were watching Yokozunas. But before that we were at Dentsu, where a former student of mine is. And the presentation that Dentsu did was to describe Japanese and the Japanese marketplace. And all the things that made Japan unique, island nation, they put it as like a monoculture, right? They talked about a monoculture, so this shared culture and this harmonious society. The strengths are also those are weaknesses, right? Because historically it's been more insular, and there was this period of time, they went over it as well, the period of time where Japan grew strong economically by being externally focused, but then grew really strong by being domestically focused. But once the domestic market collapsed in the late 80s, has struggled to find footing since. As somebody who worked in the Japanese education industry for 2 years, knowing that maybe things have changed in 20 years, but not from what I understand talking to people, the educational challenge of trying to instill people with that sense of creativity, entrepreneurship, innovation, risk-taking, tolerance for failure, these are all big challenges for Japan, right? To overcome those, because all the qualities we were talking about are necessary to be successful. That's not the way things have been done traditionally, and traditions here die slowly. And there's some good to that because it's a little bit more of a stable society. So when Toyota says, we don't want to get rid of lifetime employment, it's because maybe not for the younger generations, but certainly for the people they originally made the commitment to. I respect that. I understand it. But the strengths also, I think, are historic. So I don't know if it's uniquely Japanese, but I think anytime you look at an economy that has large global firms in it, if all you see is large global firms that act in fairly conservative ways, you're missing the history. Those firms started with an entrepreneur, a peddler, somebody tinkering in their backyard. That person tried for years to find a business that would work. They were motivated by meeting needs of some kind. They tried different things. Usually in the company's history, there was great failure along the way. But somewhere along the line, I think, in Japan, but you can see this in U.S. companies as well, people forget their own history in these firms. And so I do think that the strength is it's in the history, if we can rediscover that, if we can get people to understand that risk-taking, tolerance for failure, trying new things, learning something different, that was what made big companies big in the first place. And we have to go back to that to build that next generation of business. That's the strength. The weaknesses obviously provide obstacles, but the strength is it was done before, it can be done again. And as a society that thrives on harmoniousness and collaboration, there's some good strength, there's some particular strengths here in terms of how people can pull together once that common vision is attained.
Thank you. If I were to put Mark's words a little bit into strategy frameworks, maybe you are familiar with BCG, product portfolio management. And I looked in Mark's regimen, and he's a strategy professor. So I may not should be. I may handle the mic to Mark, but.
Oh. I would fail strategy now.
I've been helping many Japanese companies go global, and my take on this is Japanese management is focused on the cash cow. Cash cow means the main business, and bureaucracy is quite strong. So when you focus on the cash cow, you're good in management, but you're not good in creating new business. And this is where the investment is needed. Question mark. Whether if you go into India, whether you go into China, whether you go in Russia, there's lots of things that are different from doing business in Japan. Now, do you have the leaders who are willing to go to Russia, who are willing to go to Mozambique, who are willing to go to Brazil, and find a solution? And now, can you build that business to be number one or number two in the industry? And I work a lot with Japanese companies. There's so much focus on the cash cow. So if, as Mark said, if Japanese companies are willing to go back, let's say Sumitomo Company or Mitsubishi Company, when Iwasaki Yataro was here, he was an entrepreneur. He started Mitsubishi maybe from coal. He kind of expanded into the Mitsubishi conglomerate. So if we can, get that kind of entrepreneurship back, I think we will revive. So I hope you can be a part of it. Maybe one last question before, yes, Oki-san.
So thank you for great presentation. So I also took your session before 2 years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
With this guy. So okay, and now I'm one of the Nakamura-san's students. So I'm very happy to
great.
my former teacher and current teacher's session. So my question is: so you mentioned some example of the partnership with private companies. So what's the specific benefit for the company to conduct business with your organization rather than just doing ourselves or using other consulting firm? Or
Let's see. Well, versus other consulting firms, we're a university and a nonprofit, so we're cheaper than McKinsey. As a university, I have staff, faculty, and students. My students will work for McKinsey in 6 months. They'll be on the same projects, but we're much cheaper now. So that's realistic. But more seriously, I think we have intellectual capital that's different. We have a different way of looking at the problem than a consultant might. And I think oftentimes we'll talk to a lot of companies. We don't always get the partnerships we want. A company comes, talks to us, we never hear from them again. Maybe they go partner with somebody else. Maybe they decide to do it themselves. Sometimes they hear the framework, they hear the ideas, and they say, okay, we get it, we can go do that. But really, they don't end up doing that very successfully because it's hard to change your ways immediately, it's hard as individuals. It's really hard in an institutional setting. It's very hard in a bureaucratic setting. We always go back to what we know. We always have that boss who says no, right? And so one of the reasons you partner with us is because when we start an engagement, I promise we're going to be independent and objective. If you come to us with a problem and you tell us what you think the problem is and the answer is going to be, we'll listen to that, but we're going to analyze it too. We're going to look at that to see whether or not that's truly what it is. And whatever solution we agree on, we're going to be there all along the way to make sure that we actually achieve the end the way we discussed it. Not to let ourselves fall back into normal modes of operation. So I talked about the SC Johnson or the Dow partnership, or so many of the different projects that we do. Those aren't easy projects because we're often pushing against the business as usual that the individuals have, the pressure that they'll feel from their superiors or their own approach. Where if we weren't there with our own clarity of how to solve the problem and our own confidence in the way that gets done, without that, it would just go back to what is most familiar, and they wouldn't actually achieve anything different. I think my frustration over time the most comes when we don't end up getting the partnership we want, and the organization goes off by themselves, and they come back a couple years later and say, oh, your ideas didn't work at all. Well, tell me about how you did them. And I listen, oh, you didn't do them right. Can't blame us for what we didn't get a chance to participate in. But it's also, to be clear that these partnerships are, I said they're partner-centered engagements. We start with your problem. We start with thinking about how to solve that. It's flexible in terms we learn from each other along the way. And I think that we're interested in getting learning from the experience. It helps us overall. And maybe that's a little bit different because we're not a for-profit entity, and we are interested in the learning opportunity. So while we want to make sure our operations continue, we're not worried about whether or not next year you're going to have that same project with us, or do we have to continue this forever. That enters a different dynamic into the relationship.
Okay. With that, I would like to end the Q&A session. Let's send a warm thank you to Dr. Milstein for today's presence. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.